Greetings and welcome to today's discussion. Our topic is critical thinking. This is a topic that has been talked about again and again because we now live in a very competitive world, and how we're able to think and reduce our thinking into things is one of the ways that the world is going now to be able to solve the many problems that humans encounter. So our ability to think effectively and produce something concrete out of our thinking is the norm. So critical thinking is our topic. And we're going to see how we can enjoy this topic. So I'd like to begin with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., which says, "One of the things most people fear is to engage in solid, hard thinking." Of course, all of us alive have our brains working, but we would be surprised to learn that not every human thinks effectively. Of course, once you're alive, we think, but thinking has to be governed by principles so that it can be effective. Because most of us can kick football, but only very few people can become professional footballers because they know how to play the game, how to give a pass, how to run, how to dash for a pass. All those things are learned, and if it is done well, then an individual could turn professional. If not, we can only kick football around and be happy and sweat and keep fit. So the same way, we want to learn how to think. Martin Luther King says people fear to engage in solid, hard thinking. That's an interesting quote. Some people don't want to think solidly, to engage, to put two and two together, to analyze things, to question things. But some people don't want to do that. That is what Martin Luther King says. Excuse me, I forgot my pointer. So, we're going to move on to another quote from Adolf Hitler. Let's forget about his history, but just pay attention to this he has said. He said, "A great masses of people will more easily fall victims to a big lie than to a small one." So if you keep telling the lie again and again, people will believe it. So we want to pay attention to it. If that is the case, then it means that we have to be careful. It means we have to think and be able to analyze things, or else we may fall victim to a big lie. So these are just preambles to see how important thinking itself is, and how we should be able to do that consciously and effectively. Then we go right into some definitions of critical thinking, and we see what scholars or thinking people, for example, say about this act or process called critical thinking. Some definitions, for example, say that critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. This is very deep, isn't it? We'd like to just take a few words. Intellectually involves our intellect, our mind. So it means that when we want to think critically, we involve our intellect. It's a conscious thing. It's a conscious thing that we want to evoke the powers of our intellect. And it has to be a disciplined thing. Thinkers are disciplined people. And then something that is done, of course, I mentioned consciously, actively. And then what? It involves skill. Those of you who like football, for example, know that there are some skills that are so effective. One footballer could be surrounded by four. He will use a skill to be able to outwit them and score a goal. Another may not have the same skill and the ball could be robbed of him. So, skill is very important. So, even thinking involves skill, how to do it. There's always a how to. And then you conceptualize, of course, you'll be able to form things in your mind. You may be thinking in abstract things, but you'll be able to build, use your mind's eye to conceptualize, to form things. And of course, you apply what you come up with. Of course, you do what is called analyzing, examination. You take two things and examine differences, similarity, what else? And then you synthesize. Sometimes there's a possibility of bringing things together. Evaluate, you examine. Okay, and then he mentions observation, experience, reflection, and then reasoning, and of course communication. At the end of the day, after you got all of these things together, you have to pass it on to other people. That's by means of communication. One scholar, two I think, Michael Scriven and Richard Paul, says, in its exemplary form, critical thinking is based on universal intellectual values that transcend subject matter divisions. It involves clarity, accuracy, precision, consistency, relevance, sound evidence, good reasons, depth, breadth, and fairness. Another deep, of course, almost close to what we look at first. So it is based on universal. So good thinking in Ghana, it would be a good thinking in Australia, in Papua New Guinea, across the globe. And then intellectual value that transcend subject matter. So they don't involve just a particular thing. A critical thinker explores many horizons of things. And then some of the qualities of critical thinking is what? Clarity. So what I understand, I should be able to explain it with all clarity to someone else. But it has to also be accurate, plain, straightforward, not crooked or zigzag. And then precision. It has to be consistent. So if things keep changing, then it means that we haven't done so well a job. Oh, I thought it was this. Today, no, it's this. Tomorrow it is that. Well, sometimes it shows that you're still in the process of thinking, but it has to be consistent. It has to be relevant. So it means that anything that we think about and we engage in, that doesn't bring any useful thing for the consumption of people, may not be called critical thinking. It's useless. Just like you spend hours and hours building something that people cannot live in. It has to be sound. There should be evidence. There should be good reasons. There should be depth, very deep, and then breadth. It should be all round, and of course, it has to be fair. So critical thinkers are not the me first type. They think of we, our. Then we have Edward Glaser, 1941, says, the ability to think critically involves three things. An attitude of being disposed to consider in a thoughtful way the problems and subjects that come within the range of one's experiences. It says attitude, which means that if critical thinking becomes part of you, it shows in the way you carry yourself. It will show in the way I carry myself. It becomes part of your attitude. And people can be known by their attitude. Are they difficult to deal with? Do they display a deep sense of understanding? Or they are opinionated and cut down people? So a critical thinker can be seen by his or her attitude. The knowledge of the methods of logical inquiry and reasoning. So knowledge, so the methods that are used, that it should be there. It should logically appealing to people. And then he mentions some skill in applying those methods. We saw skill already. So all these are common to all the definitions we have looked at so far. Then we want to look at another definition which has to do with Richard Paul and Linda Elder. So critical thinking is in short. I'm happy because when they say in short, it means it's a big thing. We can talk about it again and again in many, many ways, but we have to be brief. Self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, self-corrective thinking. You could see that for Paul and Elder, their concentration, their focus is on the individual. So it is self-disciplined, self-directed first. You direct things yourself. That means that you don't necessarily begin to become remote controlled by other people's thinking. You want to understand things yourself and be convinced in them. Does it mean you don't want to learn from people? Not at all. You will learn, but whatever you learn from other people or other sources will become part of you, because every knowledge is self-knowledge. So as you learn, you become self-directed, self-disciplined. You discipline yourself because other people would not necessarily discipline you. And then self-monitored. You monitor yourself and see the changes you are making, the progress you are making. Is it in line of your critical thinking goals? And then self-corrective. The point is that we will always make mistakes no matter who we are. And there is not a single person on earth who doesn't make mistakes. So you will be self-corrective. If you make a mistake, critical thinking will help you to be able to accept that this is wrong, and I accept it as wrong, and then I want to make amendments or corrections. So it presupposes accent to rigorous standards of excellence and mindful command of their use. It entails effective communication. So we've seen communication again. If we're able to think critically, it can transcend into our way we put our ideas together. People will be able to get it, and things will be clear. So critical thinkers who want to communicate in very simple terms. They don't complicate simple things. They simplify complex things. So these are some of the definitions, but we could see some trends in them. It's discipline, attitude, intellect, the ability to analyze. All these things form part of the general outlook towards what critical thinking is. And it's a beautiful thing that on earth humans are given the gift of the ability to analyze things. Animals have instincts, so they don't think. Let's put it that way. They instinctively do things. That's why you see a mother dog taking care of the puppies in a wonderful way. Yeah. So to the point that sometimes you wonder, what's the difference between humans and animals? But humans have the ability to do all this thing. They can think critically. Animals can't. So the question now comes, why critical thinking? Why should we be so bothered about critical thinking? So everyone thinks, but much of our thinking left to itself is biased, distorted, partial, uninformed, or downright prejudiced. So all of us think, but just like children kicking football on the streets, a ball could hit someone's hand, but it's not a foul. But in professional football match, if the football ball hits your hand, that's a foul, isn't it? So it has to be directed. So it has to be checked. If it is unchecked, then be biased, distorted, partial, uninformed, and sometimes downright prejudiced. And if you look at the word prejudice, it's all over, isn't it? Some people think they are not prejudiced, but it's difficult to be totally not prejudiced. We can fight that and work hard towards it. So, yes, people think, and then they categorize people. All those ones will come to see. So that is one of the reasons, or some of the reasons why critical thinking, if it is left unchecked, it will be disastrous. Yet the quality of our life and that of what we produce, make, or build depends precisely on the quality of our thoughts. No doubt about that. This is as true as ice is cold. The quality of our life and that of what we produce, make, or build depends precisely on the quality of our thoughts. So, of course, out of what we think comes what we do and what we say. So to have a quality life depends on our ability to think critically, to make informed choices, so that our choices or our plans wouldn't become disastrous, wouldn't end up badly for us. This is true. Shoddy thinking is costly, both in money and in quality of life. Excellence in thought, however, must be systematically cultivated. So there's a shoddy. Shoddy thinking is costly, isn't that true? You look upon some buildings, big ones, edifices, and shoddy work goes into it, the building. How long do they last? A year, two, they collapse. And if they collapse, they kill a lot of people, innocent ones, because of shoddy work. But buildings that take quality of work, hard work, everything done precisely with quality, they last long, years and years, and they still keep standing. In the same way, if we don't think critically, we think our thinking is shallow, what will happen is that our life would not be one of quality, and will end up in many regrets. But look, it says, excellence in thought, however, must be systematically cultivated. Systematically. It follows a procedure. If you want to pound fufu, if you want to make fufu, you put the cassava, you cook the cassava, you peel off the skin, you boil it, and then you put it in a mortar and you pound. You cannot change the system. You can't reverse it. You can't pound the uncooked cassava and then take off the skin and then now boil it. You would not get fufu. There's a system that has to be followed. In the same way, to be able to think critically and look at things in an analytical way, we have to follow a system. And then the word cultivated. It's a long process that we have to take time to build. And when you think of the word cultivated, what comes to mind? Agriculture, farming. There is no plant that is put in the soil in the morning and gets harvested in the evening. None. Takes time, takes hard work, tilling the soil, making the environment good, conducive for the plant, watering, weeding, pruning, mulching, and all these agricultural methods to keep the plant well. And eventually, an individual could harvest with joy. In the same way, if we think critically and our life becomes systematically governed by proper thoughts, whatever we do, we are conscious of it, then our life will be one of quality. So, critical thinking is no doubt a very important jewel to our life. So, what does a well-cultivated thinker do? A well-cultivated thinker raises vital questions and problems and then formulate them clearly and precisely. So you can imagine that vital thinker raises questions. So for example, you could see that this is a remote control. When the television was first made, it had no remote control. So maybe a critical thinker somewhere sat down and then said, anytime that I want to come to the television, to turn it on, I have to come to it from my seat. If I want to turn it off, the same thing. Then the question comes, could there be a way where I can minimize my coming to the television by sitting in my chair and changing the channels or even turning off the TV? Okay, maybe. Then that process on and on and on, eventually what do we have? A remote control. So you can sit in your chair, point a finger, click a button, and then what you want happens. Problem solved. So questions, the problems will raise the questions, and then you have to formulate the questions very well, clearly, so that you know what exactly you want to achieve. So questions must be clear. So the question is, what is your name? Very simple, very straightforward, clear. The person doesn't want how old you are. The person doesn't want where you're going. The person just wants your name. That question is clear, it's precise. My name is Cosmas. Straight away, done. So the question must be clear, must be precise. Then the critical thinker also gathers and assesses relevant information using abstract ideas to interpret it effectively, comes to well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, testing them against relevant criteria and standards. So the person gathers, assesses. I am not into technology, so I don't know what went into these. Those in IT guys could really know what went. But so the person will do or gather and assess relevant information regarding what could be used, to make a remote control, and then using abstract ideas. So if I point my finger towards a television and click this button, that could happen. It's abstract. Eventually becomes a reality. Then well-reasoned conclusions and solutions. Then at the end of the day, they will test. Okay, it is working. Oh no, it's not working. Let me do this to it. And then now it's working. And then the critical thinker thinks open-mindedly within alternative systems of thought. Open-mindedly. So the critical thinker becomes a neutral person when it comes to thinking, even if he himself or she herself is involved in the thinking. So open-mindedly within alternative systems of thought, recognizing and assessing as need be their assumptions, implications, and practical consequences. So we recognize that, this could happen this way. If it happens, what could be the effect? What could happen this way? How is it going to affect the solution or the problems? Of many thoughts come. Okay. And then that person communicates effectively with others in figuring out solutions to complex problems. That is why if you buy a television, for example, it has a manual, because somebody has thought about it. Without a manual, it would be difficult for you to operate. So you read, okay, this button means this. This okay means this. Okay can mean this. It can also mean this in this context. So, and then the person effectively communicates the solution so that it can be used to solve a problem. It can be used to solve a problem. So, to some degree, you already seen how important critical thinking is. Okay. We would like to just touch on the basics. Another basic in critical thinking, which is to understanding facts and opinions. Understanding facts and opinions. So that's a basic. And then we'll end and continue in second section. So understanding fact and opinions. Facts. A fact is a statement that can be proved true or false. A fact is a statement that can be proved true or false. If it is proved to be true, it is a fact. If it is proved to be false, it is not a fact. Let's take that. So if something or statement can be proved to be true, that statement is a fact. If it is proved to be false, that statement is not a fact. Simple. Now, a fact can be proved by definition. If you say definition, it doesn't mean that you yourself, you sit down to define something. Definitions come about by standards. Definitions come about by standards that are set out and accepted worldwide. That are accepted worldwide. So, sorry about that. So you wouldn't want to go by a definition of your own. You don't define things necessarily. Processes go into definitions. And so we want to go by them.